the idea that I've been grappling with is to actually try to understand how I can get the different layers of the present, the past, and, if you like, a trajectory into the future. In other words, stepping outside of time, using the magic of film to express my ideas of the essence of, or the spirit of the journey that I had been through, not just as a member of the Igbo royal family, but as a filmmaker. And
National Educational Television presents African Writers of Today. This program was recorded in the Nigerian National Museum, Lagos.
Now these little horn things are very interesting. Every adult Igbo man had one, and when he died it was split into two, and one half is buried with him and the other half is thrown away. It's called Ikenga.
Oh yes, this is the cult of strength.
That's
of,
right.
Sort of virility.
That's right. That's right.
Here at the Museum of Nigeria in Lagos, we are sitting with Chinua Achebe, a man possessed of a startlingly original talent in writing. Chinua Achebe the Young has given the world two novels, Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, and all critics seem to agree that Chinua Achebe combines a simplicity in technique and a very complex technical talent indeed.
Trying to establish that is useless. For all anybody knows, Bill is standing right outside the door, and he's directing this whole scene. All right, it could be. Nobody knows. Maybe we're all acting. All right, maybe we're all acting. I mean, I'm acting. And that's it. I mean, Bill could have stood outside of the door and told me, now, Rosen, when you get in there, you tell them about this. When you get to a certain point. Nobody out there knows whether or not we're for real.
Terry, your job is that you're the person that is in charge of filming this film being filmed. Okay? Hey, where's the switch in this goddamn thing? If sometimes you see us in trouble, then you come and help us out. You know what I mean?
How about actually, I think these cameras, what do you think?
These are broken. But you can get a similar one.
Yeah. So like 3 of these with perhaps radio mics.
Yeah.
Excellent. And okay, so Ricardo has.
The director does not know that we are photographing, this scene. We're doing it on our own. And we were sitting there, and it occurred to us while we were trying to figure out what the film was about, that we should be filming this.
Yeah, why is it shot like this?
Because
When
the only people who are
you're
in
saying
a
something
position so far
and we
to be
can't
able
hear
to
what you're saying,
comment,
we can hear the other
about
guy, and
the
it's
film,
not even
because
synced up.
The director, Bill Green, he
Don't
is
sync
so
to that,
far
we'll just
into,
change that
making
shot.
the film that he has no perspective. And we were sitting there, and it occurred to us while we were trying to figure out what the film was about, that we should be filming this.
Yeah, he wants us to help him
Right,
make a
because
film.
we're
That's
really the
obvious.
only people who are in a position so far to be able to comment, about the film, because the director, Bill Greaves, he is so far into, making the film that he has no perspective. And if you ask him, what is the film about, he just gives you some answer that's just vaguer than the question.
This film is based on the curation of artifacts that were taken by Northcote Thomas, the first British colonial anthropologist in 1911, who went to my great-grandfather's village in Enugu, Nigeria, and returned to England with more than 3,000 photographs, sound recordings, artifacts, and botanical specimens, which were left in the Kew archives, and Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology at Cambridge University.
Curious.
Desperate.
Bewildered.
A bit tearful.
Wisdom.
I got a call from the United States of America, my cousin, to tell me that this... I got a call from the United States...
That was too fast of a jump. You don't even process what that was that you showed. And it happens at the beginning of that sequence as well. I think you should either make it longer or push that back so that you just skip that quick jump.
Researching our family. I got a call from the United States of America, my cousin, to tell me that this professor was researching our family, and I should get in contact with him, which I did, and by which time he'd actually curated an exhibition comprising of a lot of the photographs and artifacts in collaboration with Nigerian artists and dance companies, etc. And he put this exhibition together at the Cambridge Museum of Anthropology and Archaeology. What got you, how did you know about Northport Thomas? I mean, what got you into it?
Well, so when I was doing my doctoral research, which hadn't got anything to do with West Africa at all, I was at UCL, and I before becoming an anthropologist, I trained and was working as a filmmaker, and when I was doing my PhD, I just was talking to different lecturers and members of the staff about potential documentary projects.
When I went along there, of course it was all very fascinating and it was connected with my family. I went along with my daughter for a private viewing with Paul Bassett. This video, because I'm making a film, which I will send to Paul before I hand it in to my tutor. So, you get one of me and Paul?
Yeah.
Very quick captured moment, rather than it doesn't.
Your mask on.
It doesn't feel alive. The image is quite striking.
It really didn't dawn on me that this was actually my family until we were in the archive rooms, especially my daughter handling artifacts that my great-grandfather would have actually used in 1911.
They've sort of been, have sacrifices made to it, where there's oils, there's blood, things like that. It's just part of the biography, as you know, of objects and stuff. So this is a very small in Cambridge. It's actually a lot smaller than I had anticipated when I saw the image. So this would have stood in the village and people would have made offerings to it. And I think Thomas talks about making offerings of cola nuts to it. We've got another one on display upstairs, which is what I'm more used to, which is about a figure this big. But this one is much, much smaller. So whether this is much more of a personal one rather than a village one, I don't know.
Paul is saying that this might be a personal one.
And it is remarkably long.
Because
beautifully carved, so you've got him carving, smoking his pipe.
You see
He's
it
got
on
the
things like
scarification
this.
marks on his face, and he would have had the lovely...
And I saw photographs of the family compound, which I'd personally visited, and been into the family temple to do libations, connecting with the ancestors and using some of the artifacts that I saw in the museum, or similar artifacts.
I mean, in the Obu, in the kind of semi-public kind of meeting house, you find all of these things. So I assume they would be put in the Obu, which becomes like a family kind of, like a shrine or a museum comes to that. I mean, you saw that in the Nnama Obu in Nibo. You have all of these different things that are around.
Yeah, they're like skulls, animal skulls on the sea.
They're from sacrifices, but you also get these old kind of Ikenga and other things which would have been family members, high family members that would have then, I think, been deposited in the family oval, basically.
I was so overwhelmed with this thing. I mean, it was like a bit going to a seance for the first time or something, and also consumed so much of the whiskey that I didn't really notice. I wasn't an anthropologist then, Paul. It was really quite emotional. That sort of, suddenly the past and the present were like at one. I was almost in tears. My daughter was in tears. She was, quite shaken. It was her first connection, really, with a member of the family, although he'd been dead for 100 years or so. Yeah, what an amazing thing. Cut. Aroko bangwa, aroko bangwa. Aroko bangwa, aroko bangwa. Aroko bangwa, aroko bangwa.
Yeah. I wonder actually the song that you put, I think maybe you should put it in more fully because you sing over it. And also I didn't know that you were singing the song that this guy recorded. So I think it could be emphasized, like, for example, imagine you say, okay, so now I'm going to play a song that this guy recorded, and then it plays, and then suddenly your voice comes over it, and your head comes over it, as in, like, embodying this echo, again, like, from the past. Again, if the anthropologist hadn't been there recording this, you would never hear it. So in a sense, you're being possessed by the voice of your ancestor, which was actually recorded through digital means, I mean, not digital, like, technological means, that you would not have had access otherwise.
Yeah, I found it really sort of cool how Paul Bassi turned what could have been like a very, boring and sort of negative exhibition into something that was really interesting, and by collaborating with all like the artists and like integrating the sound with it, it sort of, whilst it was dealing with a very like touchy subject, he did it in a way that sort of makes you feel like proud.
What do you mean by touchy subject?
Well, obviously it's not a great thing that the colonialists came into Nigeria and were, I don't know. It was very cool to see sort of like pictures of relatives I've never even sort of seen before, sort of like heard about, but never really like connected the dots, like, oh, that's who they were, these are actual things that they used. And when I was in the archive rooms, it just felt really cool to hold some objects that my great like granddad held almost more than 100 years ago. Well, that's all you told me to say.
And what do you think it would be like to live in Nebo in 1911 when Northcote Thomas visited?
Probably not very nice to have some random colonialist all, up in your face, but I don't know, Dad, you can't just...
What did you think of the photographs that Northcote Thomas took?
Which ones? The portraits?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd never seen pictures of them before at all, so it was kind of weird that they were being introduced that way, sort of from that perspective instead of from sort of family one. Don't know.
Because that technology didn't exist in Nigeria at the time. So had it not been for Northcote Thomas, those pictures wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying it's just sort of weird to not sort of be introduced to that as, oh, that's, your family, but oh, that's sort of an experiment that some colonial person did.
It's kind of mad though.
How did you feel about?
She's right. That's
some
a
of
proper
the
weird.
pictures that looked like
That's just weird, isn't it?
shots with numbers on them?
You made me cry.
So she's never seen him before. She's seen him, as like she said, as like this experiment.
Nobody
with this
has seen him before.
Colonialist man.
Yeah. So
with his little pictures.
yeah, like normally, what she's saying. So normally, like you'd be introduced, like your grandmother might say, "Oh, that was your great grandfather in home." But to see it in a public exhibition, you know, it's like she found it a bit freaky.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Whereas to me, it was a film project. I was just focusing.
So used to being, you know, in exhibitions and seeing your name on posters and stuff.
No, it's because my mindset was, oh, this is my final year film material. Whereas she was just thinking it in perhaps a normal way you would think about, you know, your ancestors, your family. There's like a grey area, right, in autoethnographic work as to where you go. If you go too far down the rabbit hole of your own family history, the fact that it's my family history exhibition is pertinent because it gives me a positionality there that is quite unique. But my primary point is actually talking about the process of filmmaking, you know, of ethnographic filmmaking in an avant-garde way. And that's why I referred to William Greaves, because he did a similar thing.
Well, we were sitting around the other night, and in talking, a few of us, we realized that here is an open-ended film with no plot that we can see, with no end that we can see, and an action that we can't follow. We're all intelligent people. The obvious thing is to fill in the blanks, to create for each of our own selves a film that we understand. And if we try to think about the reasoning of the director for allowing us the opportunity to do this, giving us the circumstances that enable us to be able to sit here, we can only conclude, at least we did last night, that he wanted it like this.
Is that I'm actually using the exhibition, right? Although I'm uniquely connected to it, I'm using the exhibition as a platform to talk about film, right? Well, not literally talk about film, but by actually doing film in a particular way to make a statement about film.
Since you're being so open about the whole process and open about, you know, the fact that you being a filmmaker and making a film about your family, but then also through the game of anthropology and then also the process of making a film, like puts it in a, let's say like a constellation perspective, where it's like different perspectives coming together in a collage, like to make this one piece of, well, in the end, it is like an intimacy between, you know, you, your daughter, and your ancestors. Because your guys' interaction with your ancestors is through a colonial acquisition of material and study of material, like the way you touch the artifacts with gloves already is like a certain separation. Like in fact, you have latex gloves touching your ancestors' totem or sculpture instead of having it with your real hands and maybe getting a bit of the dirt on your fingers. So like it's really weird because it is quite intimate, and it seems like you're trying to get more intimate, but there's something like separating it from the thing, which is like these colonial artifacts in the end. And it's a paradox because in a sense it is nice that you have the family pictures, but in another sense, like the way the family pictures were taken were not family pictures, they were taken as a study. But then to you it feels more intimate. And I think that comes across very well in the film, to be honest. The intimacy of it and the contradiction between like a very cold gaze of the ancestors and you trying to access that through the cold gaze, but then still trying to gain a connection.
All of those elements that you just explained to me will actually not need to be changed because you've just been recorded and you're going to be in the film. So that will explain everything.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. That's perfect. Because now that is part of the whole thing. So when they come to look at it, the markers, it's going to be really difficult for them to find something wrong because all of the wrong things are discussed in the film itself. And you've just like the final thing, you're the final piece, the missing bit of the jigsaw. You've put it all together really perfectly. So that's it. So that will be in the film. So now I've just got to chop it all down and edit it.
In many ways now you are like a British anthropologist, but also looking at your Nigerian heritage.
Yeah. My actual...
So, I don't know, somehow you're in between, like a sandwich.
Yeah, so one of the things with, or what people might find problematic with some of the pictures that Northcote Thomas took was that they have numbers on. So these pictures look like prison mugshots with a number, and people find that quite offensive. But working as an anthropologist, a filmmaker now, of course we've got iPhones and all the latest camera equipment, etc. So you can easily record people visually and with sound and make notes of who they are. Of course, if he was taking thousands of pictures, the only way he would know who the person was having a number on the photograph. And I truly believe that was his intention as an anthropologist at the time to do that. There was this idea of scientific anthropology where, people's heads would be measured, etc., to show that these were like an undeveloped human species, a different race, an inferior race. And I believe that Thomas's first few photographs, because he would have been trained in Cambridge to actually, get that kind of information. But he, in fact, dropped that after the first 3 or 4 images. And you'll see from the collection, I saw from the collection of images, that he was actually interested in the headdress, the scarification, the reason for the scarification, the culture. So I believe he was actually doing as much as he could in his day ethical anthropology. I don't believe he was racist. He was, in fact, the British at the time, or elements of the people that were the protectorate or controlling Nigeria, didn't want academics or anthropologists interfering with their work in Nigeria. And they tried to say that he was a drunkard and he took various drugs and he was eccentric, and basically it was a case of character assassination to get rid of him. Until in the late 20th century, I think around 1920s, there was an uprising of Igbo women. And basically it was to do with taxes that were imposed on them, and they just absolutely revolted against it. And it caused the British a lot of problems. And in London, they were instructed to send the anthropologists in, because had they sent the anthropologists in and understood the culture at a certain level and what these taxes meant and how they already had their own local tax system, then this problem wouldn't have happened. So Northcote Thomas had a lot of support in London, but not from the British in Nigeria. And as a result, his career only lasted, I think, 6 years. And his collection, which he'd actually intended to give to the British Library, the British Library showed they weren't interested in it, and it ended up in the archives in Cambridge for the last 100 years. So, as regards Thomas, I almost feel an affinity to him in a certain way, having, grown up in this culture and then gone out to my family. Nigerian culture was alien to me when I went out there. And I would have suffered the same culture shock that he did. The difference being that I had access to all sorts of oral family history, and I was introduced to medicine men and taking part in libations, which he would never have been allowed to do. So as an anthropologist, that was an amazing access to a culture that was essentially my own culture, but at the same time was as alien to me as it would have been to Northcote Thomas.
That's what I think. And Ricardo, I think, is a genius. He's very, very talented. With
My dress, no? I look like a homeless. Who is this homeless?
Oh, no, that's not funny.
Hello, Chinese restaurant. Can I help you?
Hello.
Does this thing come up on?
Yeah, let's stop the recording.
Yeah.
Oh, is it recording still?